A minute. All right, we're live. So, welcome. The topic of the class is called chaos and order. And in Hebrew, those two terms are known as Tohu and Tikkun. Anybody heard of those phrases before? Tohu and Tikkun, right? Very Kabbalistic, very powerful ideas. And we're going to speak a little bit about what they mean in our lives and how we can try to harness our Tohu energy, our chaotic energy, and bring it to a more of a Tikkun place, a place of order. So, before we begin about the topic of Tohu and Tikkun, we're going to speak a little bit about what we began last week. Last week, we spoke about the fact that in life, sometimes you can have what's called turbulent waters. We were connecting this to last week's parsha, which was Parshas Noach. Noach is all about the flood. And also in life, you can have these mayim rabim, as we quoted from the book of Mishli. You can have these turbulent waters, waters that don't seem to stop rushing, the thought process that people have, the worries that go on in our lives, the obsessive thoughts that we have. One time you start in a loop and you keep going and you're thinking and you can't get out of it. And we said, despite the fact that sometimes a person can find themselves getting carried away, they feel like they're so carried away that they don't recognize themselves. Their passion is lost. They feel like, I've completely deviated and gone off to some tangent in my life. So he quotes from the pasuk in Mishli, Mayim rabim lo yuchlu Chabad et ahava, that even turbulent waters, even overwhelming thoughts, whether a person's worried about trying to make a living or in other areas that the person feels overwhelmed, ultimately the passion and the connection that a person has with Hashem can never be extinguished. Basically, the underlying message over here is that a person shouldn't ever be worried that they lost it. Every once in a while, a person goes to say, you know what, I'm not who I used to be. It's not, I used to be able to do this thing, and now it's just not going, whether it's a connection to music, or it's a connection to art, or it's a connection towards thinking. And a person feels like, maybe I lost that sense. I've been disconnected for so long. So the premise is our connection to Hashem, as ha'ava, the love, the passion that we have to connect it to Hashem, can never be extinguished. So the next section of the Maimer, which is what we're going to discuss today, we're going to speak about the fact that why is it that it seems that in life, the energy that interrupts us in life seems to be more powerful than the straightforward thinking energy. Or to put it differently, why is it that the guy or the woman that follows the rules and goes according to everything that's perfect always seems boring? But the troublemaker, that's where it's at, right? That's where the action is.
There he is.
Right here. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes. Right, and that's and many times, they say, there was a joke in yeshiva, they say, when you go up after 120, what do you think? No. You want to go to Gan Eden? You want to go to the Garden of Eden? No one's going to be there. All the guys are going to be in hell. Mm-hmm. That's where the party's at.
Boring.
And also in life, sometimes it seems, the religious people are like constantly in this effort of trying to take something that seems to be very, very basic and maybe boring, and they're trying to deliver and sell it, while you never have, the secular world or temptation doesn't have a hard time to sell itself. It's like, do I have to explain why this concert's exciting? Look at it, right? The emotions, the excitement's there in a second. And yet religiosity, the first thing people think about, a lot of people think about, is boring. And you have to come with a whole argument. No, there's really tremendous passion, and it's really there, and when you feel connected and everything else. And maybe it works for you, but for me, and it comes down to it, there's like the famous story of the Rambam. Maimonides was always being challenged by, there were people in the king's court. He was a doctor for the Sultan in Egypt. And there were always those that tried to undermine him. They couldn't stand the fact that this Jewish rabbi has so much power in the king's palace. So they would always get into these philosophical arguments with him. He needs some. No, you're good. They'd always get into these philosophical arguments with him. And one time they got into an argument whether a cat can be trained to act like a human being. Anybody heard of this story?
Yeah.
So
I
they
kind of forgot it.
yeah, they trained them to, could a cat act like a human being? So all these other advisors were saying that with enough training, you could train a cat to behave like a human being, and the Rambam said it's impossible. So they said, the Sultan said, okay, let's make it interesting. Let's have a good show over here. Who's right? Comes to the grand day, and the Sultan's sitting down for a meal. And they ring a bell, and out of the kitchen comes a cat holding a tray of food on its two hind legs, walking over to the Sultan, ready to deliver him.
Hind legs?
Yeah. He's walking on his hind legs.
Oh, you said his whole
Yeah, no,
thing.
right.
I'm still not drunk.
No, that's good. No, that's good. I love it. It's like nothing of the story bothered you until now.
Well, he's
It's
carrying
like,
each other's
hey, that's
hind legs.
true. No, it's like usually the moment you start hearing these stories, you take the creative license on it. But okay. The Rambam's watching, and everyone's looking at the Rambam, and the Rambam has a small little box in his hand. And he opens the box, and out jumps a little mouse, and the mouse darts across the room. The cat drops everything, on the Sultan, mind you, and runs after the mouse. And there it was proven, right? That the passion, the cat remains a cat, and it doesn't take much convincing. You just show a little mouse, all of a sudden he remembers where it's at. And so too also, sometimes we have that experience on Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is supposed to be such a spiritual day, but Rabbi, I got to be honest, all I can think about is food. Right? It's just like, it's because we have this part of ourselves which is so primal and so powerful. And the reality is, I think, that I don't want to claim reality, but perhaps somebody could say that if you look at the passion of a sinner, it's way greater than the most religious person you've ever seen.
Could be.
Daryl's making sure he doesn't know. Yes, go ahead.
This person is more concealed, where sinners are more extroverted.
Okay.
But I think the power of religion is more concealed.
It depends on what you're looking.
Yeah, right.
That could be. I'm not gonna. That does happen sometimes.
I got a
Just an
shot at it.
observation.
That is a true observation, right? In general, religiosity. So you know what? I'm going to go with that. I'm going to say, why is it that in religious passion it seems to be much more subdued, and in temptatious, in the world of temptation, it seems to be a lot more extroverted, exciting, etc.
Because religiosity is more about the inner connection to an esoteric, to God. let's
So
say.
seemingly.
And the other one is about the world. It comes from the outside. It's about outside. It's about the external world.
So that's true, but that would seem to indicate the other way around. If we're connecting to God, which is beyond, the passion should be a lot more powerful.
But it's an inner peace.
It's an inner.
It's
Well,
an
a
inner
personal
peace.
feeling.
So it's an inner peace, but what about the passion? Why can't we match that passion? Why is it that the bad kids in class, any day of the week, seem to be having a better time than the good kids?
That's a subjective.
I'm complaining. This was my experience.
Oh, you were
And we have a class based on that. So, Daryl, and then we're going to go. Go ahead.
If a person really finds true spirituality, then his excitement will exceed any sinner. But most of us don't reach what I consider the upper half, that is the human part of us, to the level where other people reach a visceral or sinning type pleasure. It's easy to experience a high level of excitement and pleasure from the lower animalistic
That's my point.
things.
Yes.
But it's harder for humans to achieve spiritual rapture, if you want to use that word.
No, we don't want to use that word.
But but I'll say
You gave me
this.
the option. I said
the,
we don't want
the
to.
rabbi is supposed to guide us on how to experience the
That's the-
exceptionally
no.
fine feeling of
Daryl, this is only the trial version. If you want the real thing, that's the paid
When this
version.
reaches down to here, I'm going to take your job.
Okay. All right, and now we will
I
begin.
think the point is the bad whatever they want to do, whatever it's some kind of impression.
Mm-hmm.
The good kids, they follow rules,
Yes.
and these are total different.
They're living different lifestyles.
Yeah.
And the
Different
bad
life.
kids, you know, the
They have
good
fun.
Yeah, they have fun and they don't need any explanation. They don't need a PR expert to explain why it's worth making trouble. But for the good kids, you got to have the teacher coming and explaining it. So, in order to get a little grasp on this topic, I want to back up a little bit and get into a general discussion over here about what we call Tohu and Tikkun. And I left here a couple of lines because I want to describe these things. And as I describe them, I'm going to let you know about what to write in it. Now, I want to give a general introduction. As this class is starting to move along, I intend to get into a little bit more Kabbalistic and Hasidic ideas. And it's probably going to follow more of this format, hopefully. And the basic principle of Hasidus and studying Kabbalah is you'll never get it the first time around. It's not as organized as like question, answer. You'll hear ideas perhaps. It may be out there. You take it in. You have it. You don't have it. But over time, the ideas start clicking into each other. And then a broader picture starts emerging. So today we're going to focus on two things. And the fact that it says that before Hashem created the world, He started off with what's called Olam HaTohu. Olam HaTohu literally means chaos. And basically it's describing a world where there's complete chaos, and I'm going to explain to you what that means. And then He created our world, which is called Olam HaTikkun. Tikkun literally means rectification, but for our intents and purposes, we'll call it the world of order. Okay? So Tohu is chaos, and Tikkun is rectification. Tikkun olam, rectifying the world. That's where this idea comes from. And Tikkun means order. So what does this mean? It says when Hashem started out, we know that there's a lot of these sfirot. There's a lot of these... anybody heard of sfirot? Sfirot are like these spheres, these manifestations of energy up in heaven. Those manifestations came down, they can be in two ways. One of them is where the energy is extremely explosive and powerful. So let's take, for example, the passion of love. Right? So you can have love in the way it existed in the world of Tohu, and you have love the way it exists in the world of Tikkun. What's the difference? The way it exists in the world of Tohu, it's so explosive, and it kind of melts in its own vessel. It's so focused. It cannot work with any other type of emotion. In the world of Tikkun, you can have love, but love can work with discipline. For example, now bear with me. I'm saying things.
I get it.
It's a long sentence. You have a father. The child wants a knife. The father is saying no. He's not giving him the knife. Now, what is he enacting? What type of attribute? Discipline, right? Yes. Judgment. I'm not letting you do it. I'm putting a blockage. No. But why is he enacting judgment? Because he loves the kid. If he didn't care, he'd say, take the knife, leave me alone. If he loved himself more and he just wanted the kid to bug off, he'd say, take the knife, leave me alone. Because he loves the child. So the primary motivation is love. And love in this scenario is interacting with judgment and discipline. So what you have over here that's called a tikkun type of emotion. It's an emotion that's able to work with other types of things.
Right.
Another way of explaining it is the difference between a child and an adult, or what an adult is supposed to be. A child, their emotions, it says, their emotions are very, very explosive but extremely focused. If a kid is upset, you won't be able to calm him down. It's not, and you could tell him all the greatest things. They're upset, leave me alone. If a kid is, unless you really take them to Disneyland. But my point is that if they're upset, this is it. I'm upset. Do you want this? They throw it. Do you want this? They throw it. Well, I'm upset. Leave me alone. Even if there's something rationally makes sense for them to be happy. Or another example. A kid wants to eat something, but he wants the hot dog whole. He wants the hot dog whole. And you say, here, let me help you eat it. The busy mother cuts it up here. I don't want it. What happened? It's half. You cut it in half. It's the same thing. They wanted it this way. There's no rationale. There's just energy. And the energy is very focused. So therefore it's done in a specific way. And the way an adult is supposed to be is that simultaneously, while they're upset about something, they can also be happy. The hallmark of being an adult is that you can balance two opposing emotions at the same time. So it says the world of Tohu, it was the beginning, before God created our world, and it melted up in its own passion. It exploded. It didn't sustain itself. For those that are familiar with in the Chumash, where it speaks about the descendants of Esav. For example, by the way, this difference between Tohu and Tikkun describes the difference between Esav and Yaakov. Esav was from the realm of Tohu. That's why Esav was a man full of passion and he had more fun. And Yaakov was Ish Tam Yoshev Alim. Yaakov was just sitting reserved. Now let's take the paper over here because I'm talking too much. And I want everyone to write down over here some words. Under Tohu, the first line is compulsive. You write it down, yeah. The next line is irrational.
Under Tohu?
Under Tohu. The third line is tunnel vision. Anyone know what tunnel vision is?
Yeah.
When you're really focused on something to the point where someone comes to you and says, yeah, but look at the bigger picture. No, I can't look at the bigger picture right now. This is the only thing that matters. The fourth line is explosive. And the last line is child.
Narcissistic.
No, not narcissistic. It's not about narcissism. It's about, I'm trying to paint a picture over here of a certain world that used to exist.
I'll find out.
Now let's go to the world of Tikkun. Tikkun is the opposite of Tohu. Tikkun is methodical.
Want me to write that down?
Yes, if you can spell it.
I can spell it.
Rational. Comprehensive vision.
Comprehensive vision.
And calm. The opposite of explosive. And lastly, Tikkun is the adult. So now here's the punchline.
What's the fourth one?
Fourth one is calm.
Come.
Now here's the
And
punchline.
the last one?
Adult.
That's it.
Here's the punchline.
We got a
Linda, should we
kid
wait
with a
for you?
phone. We got a child with a phone.
The punchline over here is, it says that when Hashem created the world, and there was a world of Tohu, and all that exploded, and maybe one day I'll get into what happened there, the energy fell into this world. Where is that energy? Where is that explosive energy? It's everywhere. And our job is to take that energy and to rectify it, like making a child become into an adult. So in reality, the temptations of the world come from a place of Tohu. The animals of the world come from a place of Tohu. What's higher, Tohu or Tikkun? Tohu. Tohu is higher.
Higher in what? I missed it.
It's on a higher level. The energy of
Oh, the
Tohu
energy,
is
yeah.
much greater.
Yeah.
Huh?
It's untamed.
It's untamed.
That's right.
But
it
it
takes more energy to tame the untamed.
It does take more energy to tame the untamed. But the reality is, that's why we look at the world and we look at the temptations of the world, and the energy of the temptations of the world come across as very powerful, sometimes seemingly more powerful than what people will look at as a very organized, focused, calm world.
True.
And the question is, how do we understand this? Why is the world working this way? You would expect that a person follows the path of Hashem, so there are all the energies, and there it should be explosive. And a person follows the world the way it's out there. It's mavet. It's death. Why does it work that way?
You want me to tell you?
Not yet. Not yet. So, let's jump into this mimer over here. And we're going to learn a little bit in here, and then we're going to go back to our discussion. Vihine, he says like this. Vihine. Hachidush bezeh shemayim rabim lo yuchlu lechabot et ahava. Now, I'm going to read it in Hebrew and translate it in my own words, but everyone's welcome to read it as they follow along. We established in the beginning of the mimer that even though the world is so overwhelming, and even though the world is full of temptation and turbulent waters, and the person gets one day, at the same time they get a text from their kids, and at the same time they get a message from the bank, and whatever it is that hits them all at the same time. Thank God for smartphones, and we can get hit multiple times at the same time. Multiple places at the same time. So we say, despite the fact that the world could sometimes seem to be so overwhelming, the passion, the connection to God is stronger. Why is that a big deal? Some would say, obviously, the love, the connection to Hashem, that should be stronger than any issue that comes. So you say, no, it's not so obvious. Because the temptations of the world, they come from a higher place than our connection to God. I'll say that again. The temptations of the world come from a higher place, and that's why they come across stronger. That's also why you say, where do we get our nourishment from? Where do we get our food from? The animals. Animals are a lower form of existence than we are. How is it that our energy, human beings, which are higher, where do we get our energy from an animal? I mean, we never think about it, because when we're hungry, we just eat. And then we're happy we ate. And Jerry Seinfeld has the joke where a bunch of people are in a restaurant. Before you start eating, you're starving. You order like whatever, Some people have a tendency to really over-order.
Their eyes are bigger than
And then he says at the end of the meal, and everyone's already, released their belt, the cigarettes and the mashed potatoes, you're just done. All of a sudden you look at a bill and you're like, what? Who ordered all this? We're not hungry. Right? What? You don't think about it, but if the world has a system and an order, and it all has to make sense from a spiritual level, how could it be that our energy comes from animals? So the Kabbalah has a very simple explanation. Because animals essentially come from a higher place than the human being. Our bodies, not our souls. Maybe our souls. Whatever. Bear with me.
What about vegetarians?
That's why they even from even lower place. That's why it says as an expression, Rav Tvuot B'Koach Shor. If the human being is the greatest in the system of creation, how could it be that the animal is stronger than us? Right? The ox can produce a lot more wheat or whatever it is than a human being. You put a human being to go and to plow the field, it won't get very far. You put an ox to plow the field, it's going to get much further. How could it be that an animal could achieve more than a human being? Rav Tvuot B'Koach Shor, it's back to the same principle. Because the animal comes from the world of Tohu, from chaos. The human being is anchored in the world of Tikkun. And yes, we have to tame the animal, and we do tame the animal, and it takes a lot of strength to tame the animal, but in brute force and strength, the animal's stronger than the human. And so too also in energy, the animal could sustain the human, and also at the same time, the passion of the world is stronger seemingly than the natural human inclination. And it takes tremendous energy to continue to tame it. So going back to the mimer, let's see it in the Rebbe's words, in the first line, second to the last word. What is the source of Tirdot HaParnasah, the tumultuous waters, who b'bchinas hatoyu, shekadam l'tikkun. It's from the level of Tohu, which is higher than Tikkun. Tizeu shenikrayim mayim rabim, and this is why they're called mayim rabim, many waters. Why plural? Mitzat shersham u'makeiram. Why many? Because they are sourced in a much higher place. V'zeu haravusa, and this is the novelty that mayim rabim lo yuklu l'chavis hasava. That even though you're in this world, and even though this world is full of temptation, and even though a person finds themselves in a place where they're between a rock and a hard place, and you say, you have a neshama, and you have a connection to Hashem, and you say, no, this is a match. My neshama can't deal with this. Sometimes a person finds himself in a situation where the last thing they want to hear about is God and religion. This was off. This is, oh my God. This is the worst. Like, don't confuse. Someone says, you should speak to a rabbi about this. No rabbi me now. This is the worst. This I got to deal with myself. Because sometimes the world comes across in this mayim rabim format where you're like, this is it. This is a different level. Lo yuklu l'chavis hasava. There is nothing. Despite the fact that the world comes from a higher place than us, our connection to Hashem comes from a higher place than that. And that's kind of the build-up of the Maimer. But I want to scale us back a little bit, and let's go back into the discussion of Tohu and Tikkun.
Rabbi, can I ask you
Yes. Please, questions, because I feel like I'm talking to
Just
you.
on the Hebrew word, lichabot.
Yes.
What is it?
What? Which word?
Lichabot.
Lichabot is to extinguish.
Can I ask a question?
Please. I just want to say, I don't know if I'm connecting here, if we want to go back to the old format, if this is too much.
No, it's good.
Yeah, Kira, you're an artist, so it's a...
Well, it seems a little counterintuitive right now. But we've got to
Right,
get-
yeah. As long as you have a question, I have no
Well, I'm
problem.
understanding what you're saying. It just right now.
It's like, what is this? The rabbi's coming to tell me to become a troublemaker. Then, yeah, if you get that, then I'm giving over the message. And that's my point for this juncture. Just bear with me. Yes.
My question is, if human being, if a human get energy from animal, they're coming from the much higher place. Animal, they have energy from plants. It means the plants are coming from higher place.
That's a good observation. That's a good observation. And probably, yeah. It says the higher the energy, the lower it fell. When this world of Tohu exploded, what happened was, it says there's like a wall. So the highest bricks go the furthest away. And that's why it says that sometimes the greatest souls come down to the simplest parents. Say, and these parents, and they have a child that's just like the greatest tzaddik of 100 years. And everyone in the generations like, these two people, how did they draw down a soul like this? And the answer is because the energy is so powerful that the only way it could be dealt with is if it goes into the lowest places. And that's why when a person sins and does teshuvah, what happens, we say, is he as good as a righteous person or a little less?
Higher.
He's higher. How did the person who sinned and does teshuvah end up higher than a righteous person?
Because he has to go a higher level. He has to go more.
Because the sin's energy essentially is sourced from, he touched things that are higher. They were hidden in the sin.
I
Huh?
have a question.
Just saying, wow.
But you see what I'm saying,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They were hidden in the sin. It was not redeemed. So until the person did teshuvah, it's just a sin. And it's bad. Don't get me wrong. But when a person does do the act of transformation, then they tap into an energy that even a tzaddik with praying for 120 years and learning Torah for 120 years never touched it. You make it tempting for me to make you want to wait.
I know.
Go. Talk, Darryl. What's up?
Your definition of higher, I think, confuses some people. It's
You mean you.
ambiguous
Me and
because
you.
I know what he's really saying.
No.
Even me.
All of
Yeah,
us.
even me.
What
I
does
think-
higher and lower mean? Good question.
Let me say what
You
I
wanna
think, and
yes.
then
And
you
then I'll argue.
fix it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll be Tohu, I'll be Tikkun.
There's a higher energy level does not mean the same thing as a higher spiritual level or a higher goodness level. I think. You know,
It does.
if you compare, not to me, it doesn't. I can see how an animal or a psychopath who has no human characteristics, just animal feelings, may have, quote, higher energy
Yeah, but
than
I'm
a
not.
good man.
That's true.
But I have, and we all have here, a higher character.
Yes.
Okay?
So-
I'm getting
so-
confused between your
Okay,
use of the
fair
word
enough.
higher.
So when I say higher, I'm specifically speaking about a more godly, a more holy. It's very concealed. It's very concealed, but it's sourced in a higher place.
It's a different kind of energy.
It's an energy that's fundamentally closer to God, but more in exile, because it's in an animal. And our job is, when we eat from that animal and we utilize it for a good purpose, what we're doing is bringing that energy into its rightful place. However, if we run our lives more like the animal, then it just went from one animal to another. So the only way we can elevate the energy of the animal if it's a real upgrade. If it's really entering into a person that's not behaving like an animal. Yeah.
Felicia Cohn's a vegetarian. Does this work with her too?
She's elevating vegetables.
That's what I'm doing.
Is there chaos in vegetables?
There's chaos in vegetables.
It's fish.
In fact, everything in the world is chaos in.
Including us? You and me?
Most of us. There's the... Okay, now let's go back to this page. Yes, Michael. Let's everyone take out this page again. Go ahead.
I still don't understand why the animal comes. An animal comes. Why is that?
That's what I said.
It's an excellent one.
She said it's an axiom.
We can argue with you.
You know, the angels up in heaven are called Chayot HaKodesh. You know what Chayot HaKodesh mean?
Holy animals?
Holy animals. It says when he saw the chariot, right? You know the vision of the chariot? He saw this chariot and it was being carried by Pnei Shor, the face of an ox, face of a lion.
One thing is that they don't sin.
We're not saying that an animal in its current state is holier or powerful than a human being. Let me clarify.
Well, you said they come from the higher level.
Their source, once they trickle down in this world, we're greater than them. But because their source is greater than ours, therefore even while they're here, we can see elements of their greatness in the fact that, let me finish, that they're stronger, and in the fact that they could sustain us. But in reality, on a leveled playing field, we have intelligence, we're much more capable in other areas.
We're also animals. We're just animal medaber.
Well,
I think I have an idea. Actually, the Mayim are coming from Shamayim. Shamayim help to plants to grow. Plants feeding animals. Animals feeding people.
Yes.
This is like
Levels.
levels. These are levels. Why it's coming from higher level.
That's good. Thank you.
Also, when you
Michael.
You just said that they're sourced from.
Yes.
It sounds like an axiom.
actually.
It sounds like a...
Axiom. Something unproven.
We're not, honestly, I don't think we're in a conversation about whether I can prove it or not. You want to just understand what that means. Let's leave it at this. This is the hallmark. If we were studying Talmud, I would get into it with you. This is Kabbalah. Let's just let it sit for a little bit. The more you come and the more we study these things, these ideas are going to start coming around. And this is heavy stuff. Don't get this wrong. This is crazy counter-thinking ways. This was hidden for thousands of years, these ideas and the principles behind it. So it's okay if we don't get it on the first run. I want to, we're running out of time a little bit, thank God, so I want to jump ahead a little bit, okay? You see here, after you wrote down the lines, I want to, now that you have a little better understanding, hopefully, good job, let me write for you.
Give you 100%. Give him 100%. You'll be happy.
A plus.
A plus?
Have your parents sign it. So, I wanted to take a minute, this is a little personal, and I used to do this years ago.
Got you this time.
The last 2 lines or 3 lines, think about something in your life where this is a more Tohu behavior and this is a more Tikkun-like behavior.
We have to say it.
No, write it down for yourself. It'll help personalize the idea. No, we're not in a 12-step meeting over here. We're not asking for confessions. But it will help everyone. I would recommend you just take a minute. Like, Tohu would mean when I'm really hungry. I'm in a Tohu state of existence. I'm hyper-focused and it's just about food. Tikkun is when, I don't know how many people are on this level in their life, but when I call my kid's teacher. So I'm like trying to understand what he's learning in class, thinking about development of my child. So I'm now being more comprehensive, I'm being more inclusive, I'm not being tunnel vision, I'm kind of taking care of things. Didn't think so. No one's going to do it.
Nope.
I did one.
Okay.
Maybe Joe will.
You can do it throughout the class, but I want to jump over here to the next section. In the Kabbalistic writings, in the worlds up in heaven, there's a level called Nikudah, and there's a level called Partzuf. What does Nikudah mean? Nikudah.
Nowhere.
A point, huh?
Nowhere. In Russian, it's nowhere.
Nowhere. By the way,
Nowhere? Nikuda?
that's not so far from the concept of a point.
Nikuda.
Nikuda. Nowhere.
That's so funny. Yeah, it is, huh?
What does Partzuf mean in Russian?
Nothing.
Nowhere and nothing.
I've been between those 2 places.
Yes. So you can write this down. Nekuda means a point. Partzuf means a face.
I'm sorry, a what?
Face.
Face.
A face.
Partzuf, yeah.
Part 2.
But usually
So
it's,
the principle,
negative.
the principle over here is the world of Tohu. The energy were points. They weren't working with each other. Each one was its own power, flared up, died down.
Unconnected.
Vayimloch, vayamot. It says, we said Esav is the world of Tohu. Right? Esav is the world of chaos. When the Torah describes the kings of Esav, it says, he ruled and he died. He ruled and he died. He ruled and he died. The Kabbalists point out, what does that mean? The levels of Tohu, they shine and they burn up. They burn themselves out because the energy is too much for the vessel to contain. The world of Tikkun, the vessels are much more comprehensive. So the energy is a lot more subdued. And that's called a partzuf, a face. A face is not one point. A face is a collection of things working together. The hallmark of holiness is inclusivity. And that's why it's also naturally subdued. Because the only way you can have things that work together is if you kind of tame or redirect the energies of the explosive things on the side. Another example that I would give is, and it's flipped around over here, Tipa and a Vlad. Tipa is the seed, the drop. But in the case of procreation, it's the male seed. And the Vlad is...
It's in Pirkei Avot.
Is
that the word?
Right, yeah, it's in Pirkei Avot. And the Vlad is the child or the fetus. So you have the seed is Tohu. It's just a point. There's no, it's not a partzuf, it's not a face, it's not comprehensive. The Vlad is Tikkun. Or a Gar'in,
You got those,
is a fruit seed,
you have those.
and a
on the
peri
right?
is a fruit.
Pear.
So it's also, so everything, here's the kicker. Everything in life is about taking from Tohu, moving it to Tikkun. We plant a seed to produce a tree. The relationship that happens between a man and a woman, right? And then it produces a child. Or an ikudata parts of, right? This is, we're taking raw material and we're creating something productive, something comprehensive. So we see that everything in life is about Tohu to Tikkun. So you could say, what's the purpose of life? Do mitzvot. The purpose in Kabbalistic narrative, it's the same concept. What does a mitzvah do? It takes the energy of Tohu and it brings it into the vessels of Tikkun.
That's right.
And for this, I want to introduce us to something that some of us say all the time, but maybe you never realized it. The bottom blessing. Does that look familiar?
Yeah.
Hashem, Elokeinu, Elokei Avosenu. It's the opening blessing of the silent prayer. Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. Hakel. So we were describing God. He's the God of Avraham. He's the God of Yitzchak, God of Yaakov. Hakel, the God. Hagadol, Hagibor, Vahanora. We give 3 phrases. And it says if somebody wants to add to those praises of God, that He's great, strong, and awesome, say you don't do that. Because once you start adding, then you'll never finish. So just stick with what the rabbis established. Hagadol, Hagibor, Vahanora. Now, what's Gadol? Anybody know what Gadol means? Big, great. In the Kabbalistic terminology, it's the right side, chesed. Gibor, what does Gibor mean?
Hero.
Huh?
Hero.
Hero, not really a hero.
Brave or.
That's in modern Hebrew, but in literal translation,
It's,
Gvura.
Like.
Gvura.
Maybe with cover.
Gvura.
Hebrew is,
Power. I don't know.
Strength.
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 Yeah.
powerful.
So strength is discipline. Right? No, saying no. That's on the left side. Hagadol is on the right. Hagibor is on the left. Now, in the world of Tohu, those 2 things will never work together. How do you bring them together? By introducing the center one. What's the center one? Nora. But you know what the power of the center? Why would the center be able to bring in the 2 side things? The center is lower. If you know the Kabbalistic charts, Chesed, Gevura, and Tiferet is in the middle but on the bottom. What letter comes before the word Hanora? The Vav. Vav, what does it look like?
Like an ankle.
A straight line. It's a channel to Keser. In order for the middle level to be able to bring together Gadol and Gibor, it has to bring from a higher place. That's why there's a Vav there. And that's the power of the middle. That's the power of truth. Midat Yaakov, Keser. So, let's summarize, because we opened up a lot of things and we didn't get very far in the Maimer, but we'll work our way through. This is a long-term investment. But here's the idea. When Hashem created the world, He started out, there was a world of Tohu, it was a world of chaos. It was like this pre-existing world. And much the way also as a person, as they develop, they start off as a child. Just like Tohu, just like a child, I should say, is very hyper-focused. The energy of a child is too much for their vessel. That's why a child cries very easily. Because their energy is too much for their body, so therefore they cry. Crying happens when your energy overflows your mind. And they can laugh very easily. Children, their emotions are much easier to tap into because there's not so much vessels that are in the way. So too also in the very development of the universe, Hashem started off with a childlike state. It's called Tohu. What happened to that world? Like a child, it started crying, it started laughing, the energy was too much, and it fell. And it fell into the lowest places. And then Hashem created a world of Tikkun, which is our world. and He gave us a Torah, which is the roadmap. And every time we do a mitzvah, we take some of that energy and bring it back to its place, but this time not to a state of a child, but to a state of a proper adult. When all the energy of Tohu is brought back into its place, Mashiach comes. How many sparks fell down? 288. Now, how many are left? It says when the Jewish people left Egypt, they took all the sparks out of Egypt. That's why it says you're not allowed to go back to Egypt. There's a prohibition about living in Egypt in the Torah. Why? Because there's nothing left to do there. All the sparks of Tohu that used to be there were left. See, how did they take it all out? So what happened was, Yosef, we know, caused that all the money around the world ended up in Egypt because of the famine. So with that money came all of that godly energy of Tohu. And when the Jewish people left Egypt, they took all that money with them, right? They cleaned Egypt out. They borrowed and everything else and they left. So with taking those riches, they took the energies that was in there.
The negative energies? They took all the negative
The
energies?
positive energies. The energies of Tohu that fell in, they extracted and took with them.
So does it mean that the world of Tohu was existing before creation?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right, because anyway it says so.
You could say that the world of Tikkun, not just you could say, is also before creation. Our job is to bring it to the world of Tikkun. Tikkun is not a physical place. So, and that's really the entire story of life in a Kabbalistic narrative. Tohu, explosion of God's energy, and we're here just making it right. And so that's why you can find that so much of our lives is about elevation, about taking energy and compartmentalizing it. It's planting a seed, growing into a fruit, the act of producing a child, and other things like that. And this is literally like the basic building blocks of a lot of other things. When the Jewish people were left and they went through the sea, and then all the Egyptians got washed up, and it says when the Egyptians left to run after the Jews, they took with them all their possessions. So when the Egyptians were being washed up, the Jews saw, oh my God, there's still so much gold. So they started collecting it. And Moshe Rabbeinu had to schlep them away. He said, no, we got to go to Har Sinai. So the Rebbe asks a question, why would Moshe have to schlep them away? They had it so much, and they were dying to go to Har Sinai. They should have been like, forget it. So the Rebbe explains, because they figured there must be more sparks. And in fact, and this is I'm going to close it with, it says, when a person's hungry for a certain type of food, it's not just that your body wants that food, it's that your neshama wants the spark in that food. Say if there's only 288, then each of those sparks gets subdivided and subdivided. They break off. So it's 288 general sparks. And every person comes into the world with a certain series of sparks that they need to elevate. And that's what we call our purpose. So we'll work into it.